Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Mark and I make videos about all the major sporting events that are taking place around the world and do reviews and analysis of those sporting events. And in this video I'm going to be talking about the Dutch Formula 1 Grand Prix that's just taken place in Zandvoort in the Netherlands, and what a race it was. We've got quite a few things to cover, so let's have a look at the podium first of all. And the winner of this year's 2022 Formula 1 Grand Prix from the Netherlands is Max Verstappen. Yes, the homeboy got through for a great win in the end, and it was quite a strategic race that we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. Second place went to none other than George Russell from the Mercedes AMG team, and third place was Charles Leclerc from the Ferrari team. So this started off as a very interesting race. Tyre strategy once again was key. So most of the leading contenders decided to start a mixture of soft and medium, and I think there was only one runner on the hard tyres. I can't remember exactly who that was, but the first part of the race went pretty much as to plan. Verstappen built a healthy lead and got away from the rest of the field, although Lewis Hamilton and George Russell were doing very well in the Mercedes. And it wasn't too long into the race where we started to think that Mercedes had a really big chance of winning today's race, and they seem to be really on the pace. But as we have seen throughout the season so far, it's all up to the pit strategies and the strategy calls by the teams that seem to make the difference in this season's race. Although the Red Bull has some incredible pace under the hands of Max Verstappen, that's for sure. So we got well into the race before we had our first situation, and that was a virtual safety car. And that was because Valtteri Bottas' car just stopped on the main straight, just past the pit entrance, and we saw a decisive move then for most of the front runners to come in and get tyres. And it seemed like a good move at that stage because there was still quite a number of laps to go, and in fact 40 odd laps to go in the race, and it was a good time to do a relatively cheap pit stop. Some of the other outstanding moves in the race up until that stage had been Fernando Alonso was driving really well. He was moving through the field, but once again we would see the Alpine pit strategy make a decisive move there. He was the first, or one of the first, to go onto the hard tyres, and surprisingly to the whole field, Alonso started putting in some really quick laps on those hard tyres. So I think Alonso's data was helpful for a lot of the other teams to make the decision to go onto the hard tyre, and that looked like the way it was going to be until we saw a stuff up from the Ferrari team once again on Carlos Sainz's pit stop, and he sat still for about 12 seconds in that pit stop. So once again Ferrari being the bearers of their own bad news, and they seem just to be so consistent with that on every race. I'm not sure what's going on there. Matteo Binotto keeps saying that, you know, they haven't really got any issues when it comes to strategy and all the rest of it, but we seem to be talking every week about Ferrari and their stuff ups when it comes to either pit stops or when it comes to strategy. And also it was pretty dangerous there because Sergio Perez had to actually jump over one of the Ferrari tyre pressure gauges that was left, tyre jacks that was left out in the pit lane, and he had to actually drive over top of it. Thankfully it didn't do any damage to Perez's car, and he was able to continue into the race. So that dropped Sainz out of the competition totally, and he was battling away, and as things start to go bad for you, you continually make mistakes, and Sainz did an overtaking maneuver as well, which saw him get a 5-second penalty in the end, which actually ended up dropping him down to 8th position in the end of the race. So after Bottas had withdrawn, it was all guns blazing again, and we actually thought that Mercedes was going to win this race. Hamilton seemed to have really good pace. He was on a tyre that was going to go to the end, and it seemed like at that stage there was nothing that was going to be able to keep him from winning it other than Max Verstappen making a late pit stop and coming out and having to pass Hamilton on track. But we never got to see that eventuate, because what happened was there was another incident where Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri, I'm an old school guy, AlphaTauri pulled over on the side of the track, and this was a bit of a bizarre situation here. Some people might even start saying it's a conspiracy theory from the Red Bull senior team on Tsunoda pulling over and creating a situation where he got the car going again, he returned to the pits, and then he came back on track and stopped again, and this caused a full course safety car. So the safety car came out, and then everybody dived into the pits to get fresh tyres to go to the end of the race, which at that stage there was only about 20 laps remaining in the race. Now, surprisingly enough, Mercedes didn't put Hamilton on soft tyres. They left him on medium tyres, and George Russell made a good call at this stage and said, I want to go on soft tyres, and he was given those soft tyres. And as soon as the restart happened, we saw Max Verstappen, who was in second place after those rounds of pit stops, overtake Lewis Hamilton almost before the start finish line, and Verstappen just then took off in the lead. Now, Hamilton was a sitting duck on his old tyres, and it wasn't long before his teammate consequently went past him, although it was a fairly erratic passing manoeuvre. So Russell moved up into second place, and then Charles Leclerc finally got up to Hamilton and took him into third place. So Hamilton dropped out of the lead down to fourth position. He was fuming on the radio, complaining again about all the things that the team did wrong for him, and I'm sure there's going to be an interesting debrief in the Mercedes AMG Petronas camp tonight, that's for sure, in Zandvoort. But once again, it was a race that was marred by team strategies. Some of the teams, Red Bull, are just nailing their strategies. They've got a bulletproof car, and they just seem to be having everybody in sync in that team. And with Verstappen driving the way that he is, he seems to be unbeatable, really. He's got a massive lead now in the Drivers' Championship, and Perez scored 8 points as well, so he's still in second place. And also the Red Bull racing team now has a commanding lead in the Constructors' Championship. So let's have a look at some of the other notable finishes. Alonso finished in 6th place, Lando Norris in 7th, Carlos Sainz, as I said, in 8th, Esteban Ocon in 9th, and Lance Stroll in 10th. A little bit disappointing day for Lance Stroll. After a strong qualifying, everybody thought that the Aston Martin was going to perform strongly in this race weekend with Lance Stroll in the seat, and it just didn't really eventuate for them. He was yodeling up and down the positions there for a while, but he was also caught in a bit of traffic. But it just didn't seem that Aston Martin had the pace, the race pace, that the other teams had. So Stroll basically ended up where he started, in 10th position after everything moved out. Lando Norris had a strong drive today, although I think he was a little bit unlucky at times as well. McLaren made good decisions strategically today, putting him on the hard tyre, and he went a long way, and then he switched that at the end. So he had a good run into the finish, and he was lucky to stay ahead of Esteban Ocon. So Alpine and McLaren are fighting for that 4th position, of course, in the Constructors' Championship, and Lando Norris is holding up his end as far as that goes for McLaren. Now, on some of the other drivers, Yuki Tsunoda and Valtteri Bottas were the two that didn't finish this particular race this weekend. Daniel Ricciardo had another shocker, finishing down in 17th position, and it seems when the wheels fall off, the wheels really fall off. And so I think there's going to be a tough finish to Ricciardo's career here for the next 8 races, and I'm not too sure that he's going to get a seat next year. I think there's too many young guys knocking on the door to get into Formula One who are very, very talented, and the more days that tick past, I think Daniel Ricciardo's considering his future in Formula One. And now that there's only seats at Alpine and Haas and Williams left, there's not a lot of choices there for him, and I can't see Alpine taking him back with Pierre Gasly sitting there waiting to get out of his Red Bull contract and into the Alpine team, if that deal can be done. So yeah, really interesting. Mick Schumacher, unfortunately, he qualified in 8th position, a great qualifying. He finished in front of Kevin Magnussen in the race today, so Haas can't ask too much more of Mick. He was doing well for a while, but he got caught in a bit of a skirmish with Vettel on 2 different occasions during the race, and it seemed to ruin his race a little bit. So again, the Haas is not looking too flash under race conditions. they're doing well to qualify up a little bit stronger than they normally would, but under race conditions they're not doing too well. Alex Albon had another good race, but not fantastic. He dropped down the seedings as well. Yuki Tsunoda, as I mentioned, didn't finish the race. So yeah, there was quite a few there. Pierre Gasly in 11th position today. So a good race for AlphaTauri, but not a strong race. And considering Pierre's been in the top 10 on a frequent basis for AlphaTauri last year, it doesn't seem to me that AlphaTauri is working as well this year as it 2021. And it'll be good to see whether they can actually put together a stronger package next year, as a lot of teams are still working out the regulations and the technical complexities of these new generation of cars. And I think we're going to see major leaps forward next year, but of course the front runners are going to take that extra leap as well. So maybe we'll see the status quo as it is for this year. But it was an exciting Dutch Grand Prix, thanks to a virtual safety car and a safety car, and it seems to be the way for these races to come alight in the back end of these races. So once again, just confirming the podium: Max Verstappen first, George Russell second, and Charles Leclerc third. And next week we head off to Monza in Italy, which is always a very good race. It's a different style of track again, so we're going to see a lot of high speed stuff. So those teams that have got a lot of speed, we should see Williams do well again next weekend. They're showing incredibly good straight line speed at the moment, and it's going to be interesting to see what Mercedes turns up next week at the Imola Grand Prix at Monza. So there we go, that's a wrap for this weekend's Dutch Grand Prix. What do you think of the race? Tell us about your favourite drivers. What do you think of the Daniel Ricciardo situation? Is it time for him to hang his boots up, or do you think he's going to get a drive in one of the lower ranked teams? Going to be interesting to see how that pans out for the next 8 races in this year's season. Well, that's it for this particular video. Thanks again for watching. Hit the little subscribe button, leave a comment, and push the little like button as well if you liked this video. And I'll be back again soon with another video about a major sporting event from somewhere in the world. Until then, have a great weekend, everyone.